Right, welcome everybody to another episode of Star Wars Comics in Canon. As you can hear, it is Chris Phelps here, and I have a special guest today. We don't have Mike Burton, but Mike has got a special bit of information at the end of the show talking about what happens in episode 3 of The Mandalorian. But we have my great friend, and I'm so glad we're in lockdown because he's going to kick my ass next year at some point. He's Mr. Scott Weatherly, so from the 20th Century Geek. So how you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, very good, very good. Thanks for coming on. And I know, obviously, it's nearly a year now, Scott, since we did the Star Wars collaboration between me, you, Mike, and Dave.
Yeah.
And that has gone so fucking quick. It was about now we started recording, I think.
Yeah, well, there was a lot to talk about. I mean, you know, I think it was then I met Mike for the first time, and I think the three of us really sort of we dug into his knowledge and then basically kicked him in the crotch every time he tried to defend some of the films. So I love Mike. His knowledge in this area across Star Wars is phenomenal. I really enjoy sort of like, you know, his Star Wars comics and canon and stuff is great. And I've been listening to this as well, like you know, watching along with The Mandalorian, and his little intro snippets have been ace. Like, you know, they do sort of like set me off, and I'm really looking forward to what he's got to say for this one, because you've got the connections to other shows and the calamari people, the fish face people pop in, and I was like, oh, I'm sure he's going to have something to say about that.
Yeah, and spoilers, actually, Scott, I have listened to it, and he certainly has. And you know what? It's one of them things, the Star Wars universe, as we well know with Mr. Mike Burton, is there is so much going on that it's unbelievable. And so much, and we laughed, didn't we, when we did the collective together, that there's a comic for everything. There's a leak. If there's a little hole in the story with Star Wars, us mere cinema goers would think, well, that seems a bit stupid. And I called it out a lot, but Mike has an answer for everything, and I love that about him. I love the fact that he will just say, no, this is to do with this run of comics, and it all makes sense then.
Yeah, there is a wider world. I mean, I love the fact also that I don't know who it is, but there's an artist that for every episode of The Mandalorian, like they're doing a comic book cover in that Marvel style, you know, almost like the 70s and early 80s Marvel style. So they've been really cool. But every time I see them, it sort of reminds me of Mike. I'm like, yeah. that would be something. I wouldn't be surprised if The Mandalorian appears in the comics at some point, if he hasn't already.
Yeah, and I think as well, he's, you know, as someone who's purely, and the angle of the comics emotion originally was Dave is the comic book nerd, I am the movie fan, and I have no, you know, I didn't even know that there was different Robins, there was, you know, and all this stuff, but Batman, I am totally an absolute virgin when it comes to comic and that. I didn't know it, and I don't believe it anyway. I don't believe that, you know, I bought Miles Morales for the PS5, the new Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. Is it good?
I haven't even got my hands on it yet, Scott. I've got right next to me the game, and I've got the headset, but there's no PS5 until later on this week. So I think when this releases, I'll have had it in my hands. But I bought the classic Ultimate Edition, so you get the PS4 version of the Peter Parker Spider-Man, which has been remastered. So I've not touched that. I've never played it because I'm more of an Xbox guy, even though we have all the consoles. So I'm really looking forward to it. So I think knowing that there's an expansive world in all these different things that I grew up with, it expands my knowledge. But honestly, what Mike's got to say later on, and I'm not trying to big it up too much, but, well, I should do, his knowledge is phenomenal. I could listen to Mike talk about Star Wars and different things all day long.
Yeah, he brings something extra to it, which is something I really enjoy as well. And we do poke fun at it. I definitely poke fun at it. But it's you know, it's great how passionate he is, and like how much he gives a chance to everything. So I'm looking forward to sharing an episode with him on this, because he's going to be on this with me soon as well. So I'm looking forward to having a chat with Mike straight up.
Exactly. I mean, Dave felt really bad because we've done like 2 episodes together, and we were like, oh, God, I hope Mike's not sat there cringing at home going, oh, what are you talking about? And there was a bit there where me and Dave got something wrong with Jango Fett, and that we were like, oh, no, you know, I feel really bad that I don't, you know, because this is Mike's show, this is his platform. So, yeah, it's been really interesting. And leading on to that, Scott, obviously you've not been on it. This is the 3rd episode of The Mandalorian Season 2, as we're doing week by week. What have you thought of the show so far? And obviously episode 3 that we've just had released.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. season 2. Like episode 1 was a real corker. Like they really opened the season strong. You know, they wanted to really put their best foot forward. I mean, the special effects were great. The characters was fun. The whole thing had basically been Tremors, like Star Wars doing Tremors. Never going to go wrong with that. So yeah, I was well in for it for the first episode. Second episode was still good. It was still really good fun, and it had some great moments. But it just felt a little. It was it was shorter. It just felt incomplete in certain aspects.
Yeah.
It was still good, and I think you guys covered it, and I think we mentioned it in the chat offline as well. Is Baby Yoda eating eggs made me a little bit uncomfortable when you sort of realise that they're the last of their species. I was a bit, this is a bit. I mean, they try and make up for it in this episode, in episode 3, but no, it was fine. You know, and the movie sort of homages continues. You had Tremors or even Dune. I've heard people saying Dune sort of references. Alien or Aliens in 2, and then this was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. Fantastic director, and she directed some of the episodes in series 1, and also an actress, appears in like Jurassic World series as well as a bunch of other stuff. But her dad's Ron Howard.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
and obviously he directed. Yeah. Also, he's done some cracking films, but he directed Apollo 13.
Nice.
The film like Houston, we have a problem. Tom Hanks, all that, and apparently, and I thought it. I was like, it looks familiar, but then she's confirmed it on Twitter and stuff. You know the bit when the Razor crest comes in through the atmosphere, it's all burning up. Yeah. Coming to last. She did a shot-for-shot redo of the pod. What would you call it? Spacecraft from Apollo 13 coming into crash land. Yeah. So it's she literally did it shot for shot to sort of as an homage to her dad. So I thought that was quite kind of cool.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as well, watching this and the way it's shot, and obviously I love the fact that, and I do agree with you, Scott, I thought the second episode, I did say it on the show, I thought a little bit like, it seems to be a bit of a rinse and repeat. Like, he needs to find somebody to get somewhere. So he's got to have like a tag team partner with him who he's trying to save or trying to move along in the galaxy to get to a point in time. Whereas this one carried on from that point, and it wasn't so much about that. And I thought this was I thought the first episode was excellent, but for me, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was the strongest of the 3. I think it was only half an hour. It seems to be getting shorter each episode. It's 54 minutes, then 45, and now it's 30, this one. But this just had enough action for me. I thought it was perfect. And obviously we got Bo-Katan coming in it, who's the 3 Mandalorians. And I know you're going to know this straight away, Scott, so don't please forgive me for insulting your intelligence, but obviously one of the Mandalorians, we know exactly that is, don't we? As wrestling fans.
No, I must have missed it.
Scott, I can't believe it. John Bull, of all people, doesn't know who that is.
Sasha Banks.
Yes, Sasha Banks. Yes. She's the mixed race Mandalorian. She's. I remember seeing it because she's the one they always go on about. Like she had like, I don't think she's the champ anymore at the moment. But yeah, I don't even watch. I haven't even watched the wrestling for WWE for a long time. Even though I did do the Wrestling Gold podcast for it, and that's fell off, Scott, because there's too much going on with all our bloody stuff. But,
you're pretty much recording every night, aren't you?
yeah. That's with the reality stuff we do. He's gone crazy, so I just can't commit to it, sadly. But yeah, at the moment. But yeah, so she's in it. I saw that was a little break for her. But what did you think of the action? I thought it's really strong. Yeah. I think everything about this episode's brilliant. Dead quick, dead fast, dead snappy. There's nothing that gets you away from the action. I thought it was really good.
No, I totally agree. I think the fact it's only like just over half an hour is perfect. I think that's one of the things about this being on Disney Plus. The fact it's on Disney Plus and it's on a streaming service gives them an opportunity to do things like they can say, yeah, this chapter, because it's basically like a saga, isn't it? And every episode is just a chapter in that saga. And so they have written one and go, yeah, this one's 45 minutes and here's the story I'm telling. Or this one's 30 minutes and this is the story I'm telling. Like, and it's fine, because they're not having to go to like a TV channel and go, right, you've got to fill an hour's worth of TV. It's just longer as short as it needs to be to tell the story for that week. And I love that because it means there's no or very little padding. It's all really concise storytelling, and this one was brilliant for it. Like, it was just sort of like this, and just it runs at such a pace, and the action's really tight as well. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed this episode.
I did, and I'd said today, Scott, it's a good point now, because I think I'm sort of jealous of people who've never watched The Mandalorian, because I think now, as I watch it week by week, episode by episode, obviously because we're doing this show now as well, an extension of Mike's podcast, but I'm jealous that I really wish I'd hung back and just binged the whole thing as one like big cinematic film, because I think it would have worked. Just keep like a Netflix, just keep watching. You keep watching. Like Sam, my missus, has started watching The Crown, and she's watched 5 episodes yesterday. The new series everyone's going crazy. She's watched it since it first came out, and we all do it, don't we? There's something into The Boys the other week. I watched it, and it was on the first 3 episodes. Then I had to wait every pissing week to finish the series, and I'm like, no, I want to sit there and just watch it in one sitting, So I am jealous, because I think it's well worth. Anybody who's listening to this who's never watched it, just sit. If you can, just wait, because you've missed the first series and a half already, and let it ride out. And honestly, you're in for an absolute treat.
Well, I did that with the first series. I watched it episode for episode initially when it was, coming out in America. Won't say how, but we did. And then when
allegedly,
and when I got Disney Plus, I watched them all. Again, I watched it all and stuff, and it really does work as an ongoing story. That first series, and I can imagine the second series will be just as good. I mean, actually, the second episode and the third episode sort of blend into each other a lot better than like the first and the second. They work in that way really well. So yeah, I can imagine you could even, I'm sure, like, what it'd be. How many episodes is this series going to be? Like 10 episodes? 8.
I think it's 8. I think it's 8.
So I reckon if someone, you could probably edit all these episodes together and have like 1 4-hour film, or 5 hours, whatever it would be amazing. But yeah, you wouldn't feel it because it goes at such a pace, and I could just sit back and watch this. I think it's that kind of TV where you can just enjoy it and just go with what's going on the screen.
Yeah, I totally agree, Scott. And I think as well is because the action's quite good as well, and there's a lot of we said last week, there's a lot of that sort of Sergio Leone spaghetti western stuff, isn't there? A lot of standoffs, there's loads of shooting. I just think the action's great. And I think as well from a cinematography point of view, and you know me, I don't go too in depth in a lot of these things, but I do sit there, and the age of like, even going back to stuff like Man of Steel and things like that, when I bought the Blu-ray and the upgraded Blu-ray of that, no matter what people say about that film, I have got like this sound plate, LG sound plate, which is as good as a Bose one. It's honestly, it's amazing, this sound plate I've got. And I just as long as Sam's not in, and we're lucky because we detached, so I can just have it as loud as I want, Scott. So like, if she's not in, I will just put that on, and I'm in awe of the detail. Just sitting there looking at different things, the colours standing out, and this again is another level, like we had with Endgame and things like that. The cinematography is, I can't praise it enough, and I know it's a streaming thing, and you've got to cater to an audience, because any child could go on Disney Plus and put anything on, couldn't they? And there's not many movies on Disney Plus, especially, where you've got to put a parental thing in. There's nothing on this that's too gruesome, but there's enough to keep us adult fanboys entertained and keep you watching.
Oh yeah, no, I think what you say about the cinematography and the direction, just the production budget of this. And the production levels is so impressive, because you say this is a streaming service, and it's a different world now. This isn't like Channel 4 knocking something together, like back in the day. This is obviously Disney putting money into this. But one of the things I love about this series, and it goes throughout it really, is they commit to what it is they're doing. So I mean, this episode's a really good example of that, in that he comes to that port when he lands the ship, and it looks like a port. It's a working port. It's dirty, it's grimy, it's got different kinds of aliens are there, and all these other bits going on. And then you've got the remnants of the Empire in this ship that they've got to attack to get the weaponry. And it's a whole different ball game. Like they get on the ship and it's clean and it's clean cut and it's it's well lit and it's a different world. And it's not like they've gone, oh, we've got this set and we've got this set and like no. This is like it's movie level attention to detail and stuff across the board. And it just impresses me and shocks me every week. I'm like, wow, yeah, they are going to that level. Like this is. If you were to see this on a big screen, like if they were to take this and project it onto a cinema screen, it would look just as good as any film you've seen in the last 10 years. Easy.
Oh, easy. And just as you're talking there, Scott, and you're so right, is I realise now, I knew it was Ron Howard's daughter, Bryce, but I didn't realise it was the girl that I crush on in Jurassic Park and the one who runs in heels away from the T-Rex. Now, let's have a chat about that. She's stunning looking woman. She's stunning, absolutely stunning.
First time I was introduced to her as an actress, and then she played Gwen. She played Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man 3 many years ago. So
I've just watched Spider-Man. We're reviewing the Tobey Maguire, the original one, the trilogy, the first one. I've just literally finished it this evening because me and Dave are on it for a couple of weeks. Thanks for it's for Thanksgiving we're doing it. But yeah, I remember her now as well. But yeah, she's stunning in Jurassic Park.
And, like I say, she's one of those sickeningly talented people, isn't she? Like she's a good actress, and now we've seen what a good director she is as well. So some people has got all the luck.
Yeah.
One of the things in this episode that was obviously a bit of a big moment, and I'm sure Mike has got a lot to say about it in his little add-on at the end, is the introduction of Bo-Katan, played by Katie Sackhoff, who appeared in, I believe it's the Clone Wars series. Did that mean anything to you?
No, you know what? Dave keeps going mad at me to watch the Clone Wars and stuff, on
Disney Plus.
On Disney Plus and the Rebel stuff. And he actually said to me today, because I think with Mike's enthusiasm for what he's been saying over the last few weeks, Scott, and he's mentioned it to us before, how good they are. And obviously I don't want to spoil what Mike says at the end, but there's some great stuff he talks about with the extension of these characters. But doesn't she's something to do with them, isn't she? I think, but also the quality of these shows being on Disney. These are the sort of shows I need when I go on my bike or something in the gym. Just 20 minutes, just put something on. I think I'm going to have to go through them, I think.
Yeah, I've not really seen. I've seen bits and pieces of the Clone Wars. I think of just dipping into it in the past, but it's definitely something I think I should probably take on and watch at some point, because it didn't mean anything to me. Like I'd heard a lot of other people I know saying, "Oh yeah, Bo-Katan is appearing in this. It's Katie Sackhoff," and I like Katie Sackhoff because I watched Battlestar Galactica and I've seen her in other things. But it was the thing that came after it that meant more to me, simply just from awareness. Really, was, and I'm going to remember, Ahsoka. So he mentioned. So they mentioned. He says she's going to be played by, and I forget the. I was going to say Halle Berry. Then it's not Halle Berry at all. It's. I'm looking through the cast. But yes, Ahsoka is another character that was from the Clone Wars. She was Anakin's Padawan.
Ah, right, okay.
So she has been around for a long time, and she's one of the main characters of the Star Wars Clone Wars sort of arc and storyline. So this will be the first time that she's appeared on live, and it's big news. I'm trying to think of the bloody. I can't even find it now. That's terrible, isn't it?
Don't worry, Scott, because I don't know anyway.
Yeah,
so.
It's this big thing that, like, obviously they're now bringing in. There you go. I've now found it. Ahsoka Tano. That's who it is. She's called. I've been googling it in the background. Ahsoka Tano, and she's a Jedi who left the Jedi Order and stuff. But she was trained by Anakin, who obviously became Darth Vader, and I'm trying to. Bloody, what's her name? I keep seeing her in front of my face now. This is what you were doing the other week when you couldn't remember the bloody... What was it you couldn't remember? It's ridiculous.
As David say, he's great podcasting. This guy.
It is, isn't it? Everyone listens to this
so many times.
They can't wait for me to come back on next week.
You know what? I've done that so many times. Me and David doing something, and I'm trying to mute the mic, fucking Googling, and he does the same. And the other week we did it, and we've been laughing about this. I did like the plugs and that at the end, contact I think it was the VHS we were doing, blah, blah, blah. And I did it all and contact, we got a Patreon and all this. And I did it all. Then we went into the trailer because we always go like, we're now going into the trailer. We played the trailer for the next week's episode. And then after it, Dave went, well, Chris, where can everybody get us? And I went, well, Dave, they can get us where I've just told them before the trailer. But if you want me to tell them again, I will. And I've done it to him where he'll say something and we both have someone's messaging you or you're trying to find something, like something you found of interest or whatever, or you just completely don't listen to you. You go into autopilot with me. I think we've done that many, but yeah, we've had a few moments like that the last few weeks.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try and find it now, but
well, I can't help you, Scott.
Rosario Dawson, that's what I was thinking of. Bloody night nurse.
Of Daredevil.
Yeah, but she's playing Ahsoka. So, it's one of those things that I'm sure Mike will go mad for. But that was one of the things. Watching this episode, there was obviously a lot of Easter eggs and lots of references. But I like the fact that it showed something as well as like the Empire still existing. You've got this sort of like background baddie that's sort of going around, but you've still got quite an ordered part of the Empire kicking about. With the stormtroopers and the crew for that ship and stuff. And I thought that was really interesting. That not only are they sort of digging into, they're going to show like this Jedi stuff and that, but they are still showing that the Empire's sort of even 5 years after the fall of the Death Star and stuff are still sort of like out and about a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I must admit, Scott, and I know obviously Mike we said this at the top of the show. He's the encyclopedia. I fucking find it dead bizarre that we have this big party at the end, and I know George Lucas added in all them big worlds at the end of Return of the Jedi, but the original cut, we never got all that shit where everyone was dancing on all these planets and that. You basically got Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker with Chewie and all them just fucking absolutely fluffing off the Ewoks.
Yub-Nub, that was it, the dance, wasn't it, for the Ewoks?
Yeah.
Yub-Nub dance.
Yeah. Yes, you had all that at the end, didn't you? And you had Han and Leia, he's my brother and all this stuff. And that was it. We never got this big. And if you go on Disney Plus now, you've got the whole thing where all the worlds out of the original trilogy are there, aren't they? And there's all these references and little Easter eggs. I think, personally, the original, I understand why they do it because they're expanding the universe years later, because obviously the first three films were self-contained within that. They've just killed the Empire and all that. But when you watch this, I do feel, I don't know about you, Scott, I do feel when you're seeing the stormtroopers and that, yeah, it's great, and it's great to see that, the same beats a little bit of the Empire and that, but I also feel a bit cheated. It feels as if they've cheapened to me the original trilogy, exactly what they've just done in the last trilogy, where they went beat for beat, whatever we think of them movies. And I personally like all three of them, to be honest, but there is holes in there because they just copy the original stuff. But again, they've killed everyone at the end, spoiler alert. But if you're watching Rise of Skywalker, they do exactly the same thing as Return of the Jedi, but I'm getting guarantee there will be another side of the dark side somewhere. Another side of the dark side is contradictory, but do you know what I mean? There's going to be some evil person who's still there and was sitting in the shadows, and we get another fucking 3 films doing the same stuff. So I love Star Wars, and I love the fact, and this isn't shitting on this at all, because what I love the whole. I've got a bloody Star Wars Darth Vader head right next to me as I'm recording, so I love it. But I do feel that when they're doing this, I just like the full stop element of it. Of the Empire was basically fucked, and that was it for years, and then all of a sudden we get 30 years later, someone thinks, hang on a minute, and they try a little bit, and that's where we lead into. But it just feels as if I don't know about you, and I know I've talked a little bit, but I just feel a bit cheap that they're still going on in the background.
No, I agree. It's weird because I quite like seeing it in other areas, like in the first seasons, for example. You saw stormtroopers. There was someone who obviously sent the Mandalorian on the mission to find the child. Was the remnants of the Empire. And I liked that because they were dirty, they were slightly disorganized, they were underfunded. It looked like they were just about barely hanging on. And I kind of like that because it shows that, then they're disordered and they are falling apart. This one, in this episode, that ship that they attack, it might as well have been between episodes 4 and 5. They're all got the really, really well pressed uniforms. They're all really clean. It's like a proper ordered troop and all this other stuff, it feels like there's obviously something more going on, and that's what interests me. Like, there's something more going on with this guy who's got the dark saber. But it does feel a little bit like, oh, well, we all celebrated beating the Empire before. I'm wondering what Luke and Leia and those boys and that are doing now, really, at this point. Because this 5 years after Return of the Jedi?
Yeah.
So they're still kicking about in some way. So, why is it that if Leia's then sort of started the Republic again, and you've still got Luke doing whatever it is, Leia and Han are going to have a son. Well, they're all so busy sort of dicking around that they don't appear to be taking out the remainder of the Empire. So,
yeah, what are they policing? That's what I don't understand. What's the Empire actually policing if they've been defeated? I don't understand how they're still getting away with all these war crimes as such. It doesn't matter. It looks great seeing stormtroopers, but if you sit there and think about it too much, there's massive plot holes in the original trilogy. But step in, Mr. Mike Burton, because I'm sure he'll tell us next week.
Mike, that is your homework for this week. I want you to explain to us why the Empire is still working pretty much as normal.
We did with the furlough or something with him for about 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. 5 years is quite a long time. No, you're right, though. This has been great fun. I'm really enjoying this series. And, I'm knowing how the first series culminated, how it was basically almost like a collection of characters. And at the end, they sort of like had that bit where all the characters came together in a sort of like a Western style standoff in that bar and that. I'm thinking in this one, okay, well, who's going to come back in for the final episode in this then? Are we going to get Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians and all this other stuff? We're going to have like a big kick-ass finale again. So, it's weird that this is one of the few TV shows where I'm proper excited for the next episode to come along. I'm like, come on, I'll come on Friday just want to see Mandalorian again. It's fun to be excited for a TV show again.
It is, to be fair. I'd seen something online, people saying that some guy had said, my theory is that it all leads to Luke Skywalker, but there's no way that they're going to even be able to do a younger CGI Luke Skywalker. I don't know what Jedis were about after, the Return of the Jedi. There was only Luke, as far as we know, and Leia, wasn't there? So I just don't know.
That seems a bit too... It also seems a bit cheap. I honestly don't think they'd do that. I think they want to keep this distance from that movie saga on purpose. So I honestly don't think we'll get that.
No, and hopefully it might lead into. I know this is set before Rise of Skywalker and stuff like that. But also it might lead into the story arc later down the line of the new characters they're going to do, because they're supposed to be a completely different saga, isn't it? With just I'm sure there's going to be Easter eggs when we watch it and they finally get around to making it, but it's supposed to be nothing to do with the Skywalker saga. So we'll have to see.
Well, it's a big universe. There was one final thing actually I liked in this episode, or I thought at least find interesting, and I was planning on picking up with Mike in some detail at some point. We know for a fact that I can never remember his name other than the Mandalorian, but Mando lives by a code, like the Mandalorian code, the Mandalore code, and that includes him never taking his helmet off. But then we obviously get introduced to Bo-Katan and those other Mandalorian soldiers, and they do remove their helmets, and they're quite comfortable with it, and they explain that the Mandalorian isn't a part of sort of mainstream Mandalore culture. Like, they're part of like a cult of Mandalore warriors, like almost like Mandalorian monks or something, that sort of like segregated themselves off from mainstream culture. And I found that really interesting, that again, this character of the Mandalorian is getting more and more intriguing. The more you sort of learn about him, there's more to learn. So I don't know if you noticed that, but I just that was quite a cool little nugget of information we've now learnt about him.
Yeah, honestly, I did spot that, because I thought the same. They were sort of saying to him as if, like, get with the times, old man, or something. Like you were allowed to take your mask off, because every time someone takes the mask off, like we had that Timothy Oliphant in the last one, and I can't remember his bloody character, but he took it off, and obviously it was a fake. He had the outfit on because he was just protecting where they lived, one of the town. It had helped him. He wasn't a Mandalorian, but obviously these are. But they're more hip. It's sort of like a 21st century version, I suppose. I'm sure, again, Mike will definitely explain all that. And I must say, Scott, we've had a good little chat today, and I hope you've enjoyed it. But I think it's time. We've got to let Mr. Mike Burton speak.
Yes. No, I'm happy to listen to what Mike's got to say. But yeah, Chris, thanks for letting me come on. And I'm really looking forward to coming back on to talk about some of the future episodes as well.
Oh, good man. But before we go, we'll do the plugs in a minute. Let's listen to Mike, Scott.
Hey guys, it is Mike once again with more nuggets of information about Mandalorian Series 2. And on this one, I'm tackling episode 3, the Heiress. And there's quite a lot to go into on this one, which a lot of people who've not seen Clone Wars or Rebels, probably half the stuff that happened won't mean anything to you guys. So I'm going to try and give some degree of information without spoiling Clone Wars or Rebels, while giving you enough connections to kind of get yourselves going. But I will say, okay, please go watch Clone Wars and Rebels. If you even email me, I can just tell you all the best episodes of Clone Wars to watch. Every episode of Rebels is an amazing episode to watch. All of Rebels, it's only 4 seasons. It's a lot shorter than Clone Wars. It's very consistent, and it is brilliant, and it gives a lot of information about Mandalorians. Whereas Clone Wars, I love it to pieces. Series 1, you can almost skip the whole thing. Series 2, you can watch most of, and then Series 3 onwards is brilliant, but Series 4 is where it really kicks up a notch. The finale of Series 7 of Clone Wars is phenomenal. Anyway, let's get on to this before I just go on about how much I love Clone Wars and Rebels. So the sort of smaller details in this episode is that you see 2 different fish humanoid species, which are quite common in the Star Wars universe. The first one is the Mon Calamari. You'll probably recognise him as, hey, that guy's the same one as Admiral Akbar, which is the guy who says, it's a trap. Or if you're maybe a bit more eagle-eyed as well, you'd notice Admiral Raddus in Rogue One. He unfortunately dies at the Battle of Scarif, but also there's a ship called the Raddus, which is named after Admiral Raddus, which is actually the one flown by Admiral Holdo in The Last Jedi, which is that amazing scene where Holdo flies of hyperspace at the First Order fleet and then obviously shatters and does that incredible scene. So Admiral Raddus and Admiral Akbar, they are Mon Calamari. They are from the planet Mon Cala, which is a water world. Now, if you watch Star Wars Clone Wars, it goes into a lot more details. I think Series 4, the first 4 episode arc, is all about Mon Cala, and is actually about a civil war between the Mon Calamari and the Quarren. Now, the Quarren are also shown in this. Essentially, the 2 main fish people, one of them has quite big eyes and looks sort of more fish-like, more like a goldfish in a way. This would be very racist if these people existed, but just for ease of you guys understanding who I'm talking about, the big bug-eyed fish, goldfishy sort of people who are Admiral Akbar and Admiral Raddus, that's Mon Calamari. And the Quarren are the squid sort of people who, they've got the tentacles coming out of their mouths, slightly smaller eyes and more triangular heads. In this episode, they're the ones who betray Din Djarin on the ship, as in the actual water boat ship. So that's basically the 2 main factions on Mon Cala. They're both native species. They can both breathe underwater and on land. They have quite a lot of backstory and stuff, but I'm not necessarily going to get into them. I just want to clarify that's the name of the species. They're quite cool and they're very common. If you guys have played things like, Star Wars Battlefront 2 or other games as well, you'll see they are very common species in the universe of Star Wars. Now, the main part I want to speak about is Bo-Katan. Now, a lot of you guys will just go, oh my god, she's a female Mandalorian who is quite attractive and is quite badass. She is so much more than that, and I can't go into everything now. I could probably spend about an hour just talking about Bo-Katan because she is that substantial in the Star Wars universe, which I quite like how The Mandalorian didn't try and cram all that stuff in, because the whole episode would have just been pure exposition, which is not what The Mandalorian is about. But I love the fact that she was in it, and I loved that she was amazingly badass in live action. She's played by Katie Sackhoff, who also voices Bo-Katan in both Clone Wars and in Star Wars Rebels. So, in brief, without trying to spoil too much of what happens in Clone Wars and Rebels, essentially Bo-Katan started in a thing called Death Watch, which was essentially a terrorist organization in some ways. They were basically part of Mandalore. We don't know the state of Mandalore at the moment where Mandalorian happens, but essentially in the Clone Wars there was a civil war going on. Bo-Katan's sister, Satine, was the ruler of Mandalore. She wanted to do a pacifist. She wanted to rule like a pacifist did, you know, not have any warriors or fighting or anything like that, because Mandalorians have always had this big civil war, killing each other all the time. So Bo-Katan's sister, Satine, tried to make them pacifists and try and sort it out. That didn't really work out. The Clone Wars has numerous arcs which goes into a lot of depth about that, including where Darth Maul gets involved, but at that time he just calls himself Maul really. But essentially Maul gets involved, and Obi-Wan does, and Ahsoka Tano does. Ahsoka Tano is another name that is mentioned in this, which if you haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, will mean nothing to you as well. But essentially Bo-Katan, she did all that sort of stuff, and her and Ahsoka end up working together to basically take on Maul, because obviously Maul comes back in the Clone Wars, and that's basically how Bo-Katan and Ahsoka Tano kind of worked together. There was a big civil war going on in Mandalorian, but everyone kind of banded together to go against Maul, essentially. Then you flash forward by, it's about 16 or so years, because where the Clone Wars ends, which is, you know, when Revenge of the Sith basically starts, is then about 16 odd years until Star Wars Rebels starts, because Star Wars Rebels is set around 4 years before A New Hope and Rogue One. Thereabouts. The timelines are a little bit iffy on that regard, depending what episode you're on. But then in Star Wars Rebels, Bo-Katan works with Sabine Wren, not Satine, her sister, a different character called Sabine Wren, who is also Mandalorian, and essentially works together to try and get the Imperial stronghold on Mandalore away, because at the time of Rebels, which is when the the Empire has been a thing for, 15 plus years, Mandalore is under the firm fist of the Imperials. And so Bo-Katan works with Sabine Wren and House Wren and a few other things to try and get Mandalore back from the Empire. Now, just to clarify, Ahsoka Tano, as I briefly mentioned, she was the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. She's introduced in the Clone Wars movie, which I don't really recommend. It's on Disney+. It's not amazing, to be blunt. But her character arc and who she is in the Clone Wars is absolutely incredible. She is by far one of my favourite characters in all of Star Wars. I'd say Ahsoka Tano and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul are maybe my 3 favourite characters in all of Star Wars, and all 3 of them feature a lot in Clone Wars, which is another reason why I love Clone Wars. I'm not going to go into details about Ahsoka Tano here, because I'm going to be on episode 4 fully speaking with Dave about what we see in episode 4 of The Mandalorian Series 2, which will be chapter 12, and judging by what Bo-Katan said to Din Djarin about going and finding Ahsoka Tano, I'm just going to go into huge detail about Ahsoka Tano, probably in that chat, because I don't think Dave even really knows who she is either, because I don't think he's watched Rebels or Clone Wars either. Now, the last thing I just wanted to mention is one thing that Bo-Katan mentions, which is something called the Darksaber. I may or may not go into a whole episode about the Darksaber, depending on this series of Mandalorian. Whether or not it actually goes into enough detail about the Darksaber, I don't know. But in brief, the Darksaber is the black lightsaber you see at the end of Series 1. When Moff Gideon's TIE fighter crashes and he cuts out of his TIE fighter, he comes out holding a black lightsaber. Some people believe he was maybe force sensitive in some way. I do not believe that he was. But the Darksaber was basically a lightsaber created by the first ever Mandalorian Jedi. Now, in canon, to our knowledge, there haven't been any other Mandalorian Jedi. Not to say that some won't come to light in the future, but we know that there's only specifically been one Mandalorian Jedi. This Mandalorian Jedi came about at a time where the Mandalorians were at war with the Jedi, which happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago, if not thousands of years before the canon that we know at the moment. And essentially, this Mandalorian Jedi, he got something called the Darksaber, he created it, and that's why it's such a crazy, weird, different lightsaber to normal things, and he basically used it to stop the war, in layman's terms. They go into huge detail about it in Star Wars Rebels and in Clone Wars quite a bit, and I don't want to just, exposition and just blurt out everything that happens, but essentially, he used that and it kind of united a lot of people together. After that Jedi passed away, the Jedi then had the Darksaber in their temple for a long period of time, and then Mandalorians basically broke into the temple and stole back the Darksaber because they believed it was rightfully theirs. And from that point, the Darksaber is then viewed as the weapon that the true ruler of Mandalore wields to unite the people of Mandalore against invaders or whoever it is their enemies are at the time. But the point is the Mandalorians have always had a lot of fighting in between themselves, and there's been a lot of fighting, basically lots of civil wars, and the Darksaber is meant to represent the person who can band them together. Now, in Star Wars Rebels, the Darksaber is given to Bo-Katan by Sabine Wren. I'm not going to go into detail how Sabine gets hold of it or anything like that, but essentially, Star Wars Rebels ends with Bo-Katan holding the Darksaber. And for all of us who've seen the animated shows, that's the last time we saw it. And obviously, Bo-Katan at some point has lost the Darksaber, and Moff Gideon has got it. And that's what her true thing is. She wants to get the Darksaber back so she can unite her people again. And as you can already tell in this episode, they speak about the two sort of Mandalorian factions. The one that Din Djarin is following is different to the one that Bo-Katan is a part of, because obviously Bo-Katan and her crew take their helmets off. And the type of Mandalorians that we see Din Djarin being, as in the Mandalorian of the show, where they don't take their helmets off or anything like that, to my knowledge, that isn't mentioned in Clone Wars or in Rebels either. So it's a new sect of the Mandalorian culture. And in Clone Wars and Rebels, Mandalorians are born on Mandalore. Not to say you can't become a Mandalorian, because obviously Din Djarin became one due to his creed and things, but there are a race of people who are Mandalorians, who have the blood of Mandalore in some ways. So really, that's a summary of Mon Calamari and the Quarren, briefly mention Ahsoka Tano, kind of explain the backstory of Bo-Katan, and then also some details about the Darksaber. So that's really everything that I want to connect the dots to in this episode. A lot of the other things that are mentioned in it, so for example, a lot of the places they visited, or the places they mentioned visiting, from what I can see online, they haven't been mentioned in other areas of the canon, so a lot of these things are first time. And I just want to tell you guys, I am so excited to see Ahsoka Tano in live action. It is, all massive Star Wars fans, it's just, she's one of the best characters. So I cannot wait for episode 4, and I can't wait to talk about it with Dave. Anyway, that's enough of me rambling, guys. Back to the hosts, Chris and Scott.
Right, so Scott, where can everyone get you on the 20th Century Geek? And please don't do any wrestling promos on me.
No, I'll save it for now. I'll save that for the special account. I'll do a Christmas promo on you at some point. So if you want to come find it, I do the two podcasts I do is 20th Century Geek, me looking at all other 20th century nerddom, and then I also do Stories Out of Time and Space, the sci-fi movie review podcast with my good friend Julian Darius. If you want to find us mainly on the Twitter, that's where we seem to live, is at 20th Century Geek and at Pod Time Space. And the podcasts are available on all good podcast catchers.
Good stuff. Thanks, Scott. Nice one. And myself, I've probably got a list as long as my arm, but we've got the Comics in Motion. If you want to contact us, Comics in Motion P on Twitter and that. If you want to email the show, the Comics in Motion podcast @gmail.com. Me and Dave also do the VHS Strikes Back. So if you can get over to any of your podcast catching apps like Scott's as well, we're available on all of it. And if you're into reality TV stuff, which I don't necessarily think you're going to be listening to this show on reality stuff, we do another one called Chris and Dave's Reality Cast. And we have, for some reason, a crazy following in America, Scott. And it's just gone wild over. We're recording The Bachelorette at the moment, which I don't know if you've seen any of that this year, Scott.
I've not seen this year's. I've not seen any years, Chris. It's not a pro. I'm aware of it. I've just never seen it. Reality TV is really not my thing.
Well, about a year and about 15 months ago, I know a very, very good friend of mine who would have said the same and actually would have told me to go and fuck yourself, Chris. But now he watches pretty much every reality TV show, especially when I'll put the little seed in his head, and that is the Mr. Dave Horrocks. And he cannot get away from it all now because of me, and he probably hates me for saying and getting him into it. But there's no escape once you get in. Once the reality claws get in of this fake drama, we could talk for hours, me and Dave. So ridiculous, Scott. Absolutely ridiculous. That's where you can get us.
Venus flytrap of reality TV.
I'm saying that, and I'm about to, as we've recorded this, I'm about to go watch I'm a Celebrity. So I can't really say too much.
No, it's good. I have checked out a couple of those episodes, and they do make me laugh. But the thing is, because I don't watch any of them, it's all a little bit over my head. So I'll stick with the Comics in Motion network and all the stuff my world, the world I know, where I feel comfortable.
Yeah, Stick to what you know, Scott. I totally agree. Right. So thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it. And I'm waiting for that Christmas promo, because the good thing is, if we're still in lockdown, we can have a socially distanced wrestling match and I literally will not get hurt. So that's even better.
That's a good idea. Well, no, I don't know. I'll introduce someone in your bubble to it and they can come and kick your ass instead.
Just giving me Missy. She's wanted to love me for years, so you know. I'll take care, mate, and I'll see you next time.
Cheers, Grace.
Bye, everyone.